The New Testament book of Jude quotes it directly. Peter references its theology. Some scholars argue that Jesus himself drew from its language and imagery, and yet, you have almost certainly never read it. The Book of Enoch, one of the oldest Jewish texts in existence. A foundational document of early Christianity, hidden for over 1,000 years, nearly erased from history. The question is not why it was forgotten. The question is, who decided the world shouldn't have it, and what were they afraid of? The Book of Enoch is attributed to Enoch, the great-great-great-great-grandfather of Noah, described in Genesis as a man who walked with God and was taken directly to heaven without dying. The text itself is a collection of visions. Enoch is taken on a cosmic journey through the heavens to the throne of God, to the prison where the fallen watchers are bound, to the ends of the earth. He sees the structure of creation. He receives knowledge of angels, of judgment, of the coming Messiah. The version we have today comes primarily from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, the only Christian tradition that never lost or rejected it. The Ethiopian canon includes the Book of Enoch as scripture to this day, but that is not where it originated. Fragments of the Book of Enoch were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947, written in Aramaic, dating to at least the 2nd century BC. Multiple copies. More copies of Enoch were found at Qumran than most books of the Hebrew Bible. This was not a fringe text. This was a central document of ancient Jewish faith. The clearest evidence that the Book of Enoch was considered authoritative by early Christians is right in the New Testament. You do not need to speculate, you simply need to read. Jude 1:14-15. I'll read it exactly as it appears. Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about these men. See, the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones to judge everyone. That is a direct quote, word for word from the Book of Enoch, chapter 1, verse 9. Jude does not say it is written somewhere or there is a tradition that. He names Enoch by name and quotes his prophecy as authoritative, as the word of a prophet. The second letter of Peter, chapter 2, describes angels who sinned being cast into chains of darkness, reserved for judgment. This is the precise narrative of the Book of Enoch. The vocabulary, the structure, the theology, it comes directly from Enoch. The early church fathers, Tertullian, Origen, Clement of Alexandria, wrote about the Book of Enoch extensively. Tertullian, writing around 200 AD, argued forcefully that it should be considered scripture. For the first 200 years of Christianity, the Book of Enoch was widely read and widely respected. And then something changed. The 4th century was the turning point. As the Roman Church consolidated authority, a series of councils began the process of defining the biblical canon. Which books were in, which books were out, and crucially, who got to decide. The Council of Laodicea in 363 AD, the Council of Hippo in 393 AD, the Council of Carthage in 397 AD. Jerome, commissioned by Pope Damasus to produce the authoritative Latin translation of the Bible, the Vulgate, was particularly influential. And Jerome had a problem with the Book of Enoch, not a textual problem, a theological one. The Book of Enoch's account of the Watchers and Nephilim raised questions that the institutional church was not prepared to answer. If angels could physically descend and produce children with human women, what did that mean for the nature of angels, for the uniqueness of the incarnation, for the theological framework that the church was building? Augustine of Hippo, one of the most influential theologians in Christian history, worked hard to reinterpret Genesis 6. The sons of God were not angels, he argued. They were simply the righteous descendants of Seth, good men who married ungodly women. This interpretation required overriding the plain meaning of the Hebrew Bene Ha-Elohim, which, as we've established, refers to divine beings throughout the Old Testament. But it solved the theological problem, and it made the Book of Enoch, with its detailed, specific named account of angelic descent, theologically inconvenient. Books that raise uncomfortable questions tend to disappear from official canons. The Book of Enoch survived because of one remarkable fact. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church never submitted to Rome. When the councils of the Western Church were pruning the canon, Ethiopia preserved its own tradition. The Book of Enoch, called in Ge'ez the Metzahafe Henok, remained part of Ethiopian scripture, copied, preserved, venerated, for over 1,000 years while Europe forgot it existed. In 1773, a Scottish explorer named James Bruce brought 3 manuscripts of the Book of Enoch back to Europe from Ethiopia. For the first time in centuries, the Western world had access to the complete text. The reaction from scholars was extraordinary. Here was a document that explained the background to the New Testament, that gave names and details to events only hinted at in Genesis. That preserved theology that the early church had clearly known and then deliberately set aside. Then in 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the caves of Qumran. Among them, 7 distinct manuscripts of the Book of Enoch, in Aramaic. Dating back to the 2nd century BC and earlier, the text that the Western Church had declared non-canonical was, archaeologically, one of the most well-attested documents of ancient Judaism. The question was never whether Enoch was old enough, or reliable enough, or important enough. The question was always what it said, and what the powerful did not want people to know. The Book of Enoch was not lost by accident. It was removed by decision, by men who held authority over what the faithful were permitted to read, to question, and to know. But the text survived. In Ethiopia, in Qumran, in fragments and quotations embedded in the books that were permitted to remain. And now, you can read it yourself. In our next episode, we look at the most condemned figure in the Book of Enoch, the angel whose name was preserved in the scapegoat ritual of Yom Kippur, the one held specifically responsible for the corruption of humanity, Azazel. Subscribe.